Hello, everyone, and welcome to another conversation here at Fairfax Surrogacy. Today, we're going to be focusing on the legal aspects of the process, specifically about Florida law. And we are here joined today by the one and only, the wonderful Marla Neufeld,
Thank
and
you.
she represents Greenspan Murder, right?
Yes,
Am I
yes.
pronouncing it right?
Yeah, green spoon martyr, yes.
And she specializes in third-party reproduction and has professional and personal experience with the process. Marla, thank you so much for
Oh,
being
yes.
here today with us to discuss this journey. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you, first off, so much for having me. This is such an honor to be with you today. And as you said, my name is Marla Neufeld. I'm a reproductive attorney in Florida. I work at a large law firm. It's actually a national-wide law firm called Green Spoon Martyr, but I founded the surrogacy practice group at my firm. So, as Perla mentioned, I went through my own personal experience with surrogacy. Not to overshare, but I went through years of infertility and ultimately decided to work with a surrogate to have my kids. And thankfully, we had a successful process. And I have twin 11-year-old boys via surrogacy. And so, my personal experience really shaped the legal work that I do. It is a daily reminder when I work with my clients, just I'll never forget, how hard the process is when you're in it. And so, I'm so grateful for the process of surrogacy personally, and obviously I love what I do professionally. And so, yeah, so I'm licensed in Florida. That's what we're going to talk about today. And yeah, I'm so excited to be with you today.
And we are so excited to have you. Thank you so much. And thank you
Yes.
for sharing your personal experience as well. I think that brings um, a different point of view, from going through the process yourself. So that is really wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
as you mentioned, we're going to be focusing in Florida. So I want to start by why is Florida such a good state for surrogacy?
Yeah, so Florida is widely considered one of the surrogacy-friendly states. And just taking one step back for our listeners, surrogacy is a state-specific process. So you do have to consider the state law really through different stages of your process, but certainly before you're being matched with a surrogate, what law is favorable based upon your a parent or parent situation. So Florida allows anyone that wants to be a parent via surrogacy to become one. You can be married, single, same sex. You can use donor egg, donor sperm, and you can even proceed with a fully donated embryo in Florida. So what's great about Florida is we have laws that reflect and help anyone that wants to be a parent to become one. So that's kind of one of the first steps as far as reasons why Florida is surrogacy friendly. Our courts are, efficient and understanding of the process. So I feel like we have a good framework. The hospitals typically understand what's going on. So just in general, the process can be smooth from hospital to court process to getting the birth certificate. And as I mentioned, just I think one of the best parts is just anyone that wants to be a parent can become one through third-party assisted reproduction in Florida.
Thank you so much. And now that you mentioned the legal framework, is it the same for everyone, or is it a
Yeah,
different process to establish parentage for depending on your circumstances?
that's a great question. So this is something that I do have to talk to parents or a parent at the very beginning of the process because the legal framework is different depending on the facts of the intended parent. So if you're married using one of the parent's genetics, we proceed under Florida surrogacy statute. If you're single, not married, or using genetics that are not related to either couple, like in the case of a donor embryo, we proceed under a subsection of our adoption laws called a pre-planned adoption. That being said, both legal frameworks allow a parent or parents to become a legal parent via surrogacy, but I do think it's really important that the parents speak to an experienced Florida reproductive attorney at the beginning of the process so they understand what the steps look like because it might be that's kind of one of not the downsides but just a Florida thing to consider is just how that specific jurisdiction to where you're filing parentage handles the two different statutes differently. Where I file in Broward County, at the end of the day, the parents won't see a difference in how it's handled, but I can't speak for every, Florida's a large state, so I can't speak for every jurisdiction on how they're handled.
How long would the process take in average?
As far as getting the birth certificate
Hmm.
yeah, so where again, and I'm speaking for where I file in Broward County, and we can file in Broward as long as I'm the attorney handling the matter. It's regardless of where the parents are located or where the surrogate is located, as long as she's in Florida. I would say it takes approximately 2 to 3 weeks from the birth for me to get the birth certificate, which generally speaking, I think is very quick.
Yes.
I've gotten them quicker than 2 weeks. And if it's like a Christmas holiday or whatnot, it could take longer, but I would say the average is roughly 2 to 3 weeks from birth.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's quick. I mean, most domestic parents are home by the time the birth certificate arrives at my office, and then I FedEx it to them back at their house. I know we're going to talk about this later, but international attendant parents do have to factor in that 2 to 3 week wait because they can't go home until they can get their passport.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that is relatively fast. And as you said, domestic parents are back home anyway, so
Right.
it doesn't really make a difference to them. So what would you say are the biggest pros and cons of doing surrogacy in Florida?
Yeah. So, and I actually should take a even bigger step back and mention that what we're talking about today is gestational surrogacy. So this is where the surrogate does not have any genetic connection to the child, which I presume is the only situation where Fairfax would be handling anyway. But in Florida, both are legal, but I really only handle gestational surrogacy. So this is again where the surrogate is not genetically related to the child. And so, the pros in Florida, as I was saying, is we have a legal framework for any parent that wants to become a parent via surrogacy. So it's a very established law, a clear process. And so the parents can, go into this comfortably knowing that they'll be a legal parent at the end of the day. Whether it's a pro or a con, what's unique to Florida, our surrogacy statute does have a medical need requirement. It really is a best practice per the American Society for Reproductive Medicine that anyone proceeding with surrogacy is doing so based upon some type of medical need, but that's actually codified within our law. So in Florida, you have to proceed with surrogacy based upon a situation of where the intended mother has difficult gestating a pregnancy to term, or there's a risk of pregnancy to the mother or the fetus. So um, some might see that as a con, but I just because it might make a parent wonder, well, do I meet this requirement of the Florida law? But I see it as a pro. I think that it really makes people consider why they're doing it. They collaborate with the doctors to make sure there's a medical need. So whether it's a good or bad, just kind of mentioning that's a specific thing to Florida law. Um, I think it's a pro that our surrogacy statute does require a written agreement entered into between the parties. I think that really protects everybody involved, the parents, the surrogate. So it's a very clear framework of who the parent will be, what the payments are going to be. Um, and so that I think is important. Florida law does not require two separate lawyers for the parties, but it's absolutely a best practice and one that I always maintain for surrogacy, that the surrogate be separately represented by her own attorney, paid for by the parents. Again, not required by law, but just an important thing. So I guess for cons, since it can't all be pros, I would say in Florida, people are nervous about our abortion laws, and that can be an entire different conversation. But we do have very restrictive laws regarding a permissible abortion. It's essentially a 6 week ban in Florida, with very, very limited exceptions to allow it past 6 weeks, which makes people nervous, understandably so. There's nothing in our law that prevents the parties from agreeing to travel outside of Florida if that was needed. And at this time, absent any changes in the laws, that is how we address it in Florida. So that kind of turns into a pro that there's nothing that prevents the parties from having to agree to a state to go to where the parents would pay for the travel and the medical expenses and everything. If an abortion was needed or a selective reduction, that the surrogate would likely have to do it outside of Florida. So I think whether it's a pro or a con, I think it's just a really important matching point to think about. Something that Fairfax will talk to everybody about when they're being matched. Just, is the surrogate okay, not just with having an abortion if the parents ask, but would she be okay to travel outside of Florida? Because that likely will be needed at this time, given our current laws.
Yes, and we love Florida too because it's very accessible.
Yes,
Very
it's true.
accessible. Then you have international parents who don't speak the language, so it's a perfect place to find, not only a surrogate that speaks Spanish, but also hospitals. And I know
It's
you
true.
have help within your law firm
Yes.
of bilingual professionals and accessibility in general to the airport,
True.
to different services. So that's always nice to have.
Yeah, it's funny. I know you, as the agency, think of the actual the on the ground logistics, which is
Yes.
exactly what you should be thinking of. I'm not even thinking, but yes, the airports. We have many major airports throughout the state. We're certainly a big location for intended parents coming from South America and other Spanish-speaking countries, just due to the proximity. And many times parents have second homes here, family here, which make Florida just like a more comfortable spot for a lot of international intended parents.
And we can't forget the weather. I mean,
Yes, I mean not in the summer, but it is quite beautiful. Not a bad place to be for a few weeks.
yes, yes. Everybody wants to escape to Florida at some
Yeah.
point.
Yes, it's true.
Marla, talking specifically about that, let's talk about international parents. Do you have any advice or any special considerations for intended parents that are considering matching
Yeah.
with a surrogate in Florida?
So I wouldn't say it's anything specific to Florida at this time. I mean, our laws allow any intended parent to proceed here. I know there are some limited states that do not allow international intended parents. Florida does not have that restriction. So from a Florida law perspective, there's nothing increasingly worrisome for an international intended parent. But just as a general concept, there certainly are things to consider for an international intended parent pursuing surrogacy in Florida or really anywhere in the United States. I mean, as you mentioned, one of the first things that comes to mind is language barrier. I mean, it's important that as an intended parent from another country that you understand what you're signing, what you're agreeing to do with your surrogate in Florida or whatever state. So making sure if anything needs to be translated that you have that done. As you mentioned, I do have on staff Spanish speaking staff and other, just depending on the language, we can get assistance with that. But first of all, just understanding what you're doing is obviously very important. Another thing I think about is the international intended parents' legal ability to travel to the United States and stay here for the required period of time. So that will require a parent to analyze their travel documents. They might need to engage a immigration attorney to help advise them to make sure their visa allows travel to the US and the ability to stay here. I say that an intended parent usually has to come to Florida probably at least two times, might be the medical screening and certainly the birth. So, and you don't know necessarily how long the baby's going to be required to stay in the hospital or be cleared to travel. So, of course, best case scenario, the baby's ready to go home in a few days from the hospital, but that's not always the case. Even with my own process, my kids had to be in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And an international intended parent needs to make sure that they have the ability to stay here legally for the required time. It's kind of nitty gritty, but even like coming down to the passport, you have to, as I mentioned, you have to wait for the birth certificate. Both parents have to be in the US for the passport unless they sign this notarized document that allows. So I've had cases where international intended parents, one had to go home for work to take care of another child. So there's certain documents that would be needed to allow one parent to go home and one to stay. So there's just logistics that a domestic parent doesn't have to think about. Um, Making it to the delivery is an important thing to think about, because babies don't always come as they're planned. So giving enough time to get here well in advance of a delivery date to make sure that the parents are here for the delivery, to take custody of the child, and to avoid any kind of situation where they're not here to, make medical decisions or take the baby home. And I have, of course, had that happen where the parents did not get here in time. And that's a whole separate conversation on how we can make their wishes for the child known so that medical decisions can be made literally if the parents are on the plane and can't be reached. And the last thing, this is more a very, very current situation, are the potential changes to birthright citizenship. And what I mean by that is, as of now, and as it's been in the United States for hundreds of years, is any parent, any person born on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen. And the current Trump administration is attempting to change this, where it would only be the case if born to a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. So a lot of international intended parents are concerned about, will their baby be a U.S. citizen when born here? And right now, it's a little too early to understand exactly how this potential change in the law will affect them. We don't know if it's going to be the citizenship of the surrogate, of the parents, like what the government will look at, whether this is going to be challenged and not an issue at all. So my firm is very carefully monitoring this. And I think international intended parents need to consult with an attorney in their home country to understand, as a backup plan, what options do they have to get a passport from their home country if it ends up being that they can't get a US passport to go home. So, for example, if a parent's French, like, could they get a French passport from their consulate if one from the US Department of State is not possible? So, I'm not trying to be alarmist with this possible change, but I think it's just something that anyone considering this process that lives abroad should just know their options, like know their plan B on that. So, because right now we just don't know how this potential change is going to play out. And the last thing is kind of what I was saying before, is any international intended parent should be in close communication with a surrogacy attorney in their home country to make sure that whatever process we handle in Florida is great and will be complete, but that there might be additional steps to take back home. There might be a certain registration process or even a court process. And it's great if I can be in touch with their lawyer so I know how I can help with their process there. Like, they might need apostille documents, or in France, there's a certain affidavit that I need to sign 30 days after the birth. So just good communication between both attorneys is important. And so I know it's kind of a lot, but a lot of things to think about, but good planning and good communication is key with any international intended parent.
And that's why it's important to consider who you will be working with so that they
Yeah,
can hold your hand and help you expedite the process. And our experience with Marla has been wonderful.
thank
We
you.
recently had a set of intended parents that had their baby in Florida who went to visit in person, and they
Which,
called me. They were going home so quickly. So how many
um,
weeks was that, Marla? That was fairly quick since the delivery.
yeah, it was. And I was so happy. And I feel their stress to want to get home. So I'm not just
Mhm.
like ignoring, or I'm doing everything I possibly can to get it done as quickly as possible for all parents. But I certainly understand the stress of an international intended parent. They just want to go home. And I hear them on that. So, and that was so awesome that you all came down to meet with the parents. And I actually got to see you too, which is really nice. Because
Yes.
that's a very special relationship where it's not just another client. It's like you really like feel and want to support them in that. And I think that was really
Whenever
cool.
possible, we try to do that.
Yeah, and it's
When
not
we're
easy to
allowed,
do.
because it's a
Yeah.
very private moment, it's a
Yes.
very private time. There are intended parents who want us there,
Yeah.
want to see us, want us to meet the baby, and there are some others that just want time to enjoy
Yes.
this very special moment.
For
And each
sure.
way is okay, but we love seeing the the new diapers and the
Yeah.
cuddles and the kisses and the
Oh, I know.
excitement that and our surrogates too when they have finish their journey and they are studying a new an entirely new side of the process that is recovering and going back to their family. So and
Yes.
it was so nice to see you. It came full circle for us. It was wonderful. But what would you
Yeah.
say then would be the average time for international intended parents to go back home if there were no complications in the delivery.
Yeah, so I usually anticipate having them here for a month, although I think they
Mhm,
could get home quicker.
mhm.
It's important that I don't handle getting a passport, but I do connect parents with passport expediting services. And typically those are like same or next day. I mean, absent COVID, which created crazy delays. Now, after that, that's back to being quick. So roughly, roughly probably get it done in 3 weeks where they could go home. But I like to budget at least a month to give
Yeah.
that wiggle room. And I
Mhm.
stay in very, very close communication with the parents, like at each step. So I need the final court order to be able to get the birth certificate. So once I get the court order, I have a better sense of how quickly I'm going to get the birth certificate. So
Mhm.
it's not like they're not hearing from me going, okay, now you can go make your passport appointment. Like I'm keeping them updated so they can get a sense of what's next. And so, but yeah, parents do need to allow time to be here. And I know that's not easy, like being away from home and work and family and all that, but it's just something you have to budget in. And if it's two parents, like I said, seeing if both parents can stay, and if not, there's certain documents that have to be signed and notarized to allow one parent to go home in order to apply for the passport.
Yeah, and aside of that, I mean, you want your baby, it's a newborn, you want your baby to have a clean bill of health
Yes.
before you get back in an airplane.
Oh,
Anyway,
yes.
so you need a
Yes.
little time there
Yeah,
to,
just mentally prepare to fly internationally with a newborn too.
yes, yes.
Yes.
Marla, switching gears a little bit to gestational carriers, what protections Florida law has in place to protect gestational
Yeah.
carriers?
Well, I think some of the big protections just stem from the fact that our law requires a contract. And like I said, our law does not require two lawyers, but it's a best practice and one that I always require. And in that agreement, I mean, so much goes into a surrogacy agreement. And a lot of those provisions protect the surrogate as far as um, setting out, her wishes on the delivery room, what her payments are going to be, her comfort level on abortion and reduction. So I think just the fact that we have contracts that are required is a big protection. Our Florida surrogacy statute has a provision in it that provides that the surrogate has the sole source of consent with respect to her body. So I think that's also a big protection that ultimately the medical decisions that are made are for the surrogate to make. I mean, she is the ultimate decider pertaining to her body. That's like the starting point in Florida. Whether contractually she's agreeing to do certain things, that's something that she has to consider, talked with her lawyer about. Like, for example, in the abortion section, she's the ultimate decider with whether she has an abortion. Although in a contract, she might agree to have one under certain circumstances. But this is her body, so she shouldn't be forced to do something that she's not comfortable with. And so I think that's a legal protection. And our law requires her to be at least 18, which is obviously super, super young. I mean, it is a protection that we can't have minors and being a surrogate, but typically, surrogates aren't typically that young. But we do have a law in our law about the age. Um, and a lot of our protections really stem from not the law, but best practices, like the two lawyers requiring that she be medically screened. She can't just proceed if it's not going to be medically safe for her. Her lawyers are paid for by the parents. None of these are required by law. And obviously, the importance that she has informed consent, that she knows what she's getting into and medically has all her questions answered so that she can enter this process knowingly understanding what's involved and not entering into anything blindly. Again, not a Florida surrogacy law requirement, but things that do come up within our contract. So we have, a lot of protections similar to other states that equally protect the surrogate as well, which is super important.
Of course, of course. And our minimum age requirement here at Fairfax is 21. And
Okay,
even
yeah.
then, you have to consider their level of maturity and if they're really ready to do this
Yeah,
process.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of the best practices that Fairfax looks for aren't things in our law, like
Hmm.
whether she's had a prior safe delivery,
Hmm.
um, BMI, like weight, marital status. These aren't Florida law requirements, their best practices and things that you would be looking for, stable living environments,
Yes.
good reliable communication, transportation, things
Hmm.
like that. So, but of course, like the best matches happen when everything's right. Like if someone's too young or in an unstable environment, like it's just not going to be a comfortable match for anyone.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And on that topic, what would be one piece of advice that you give anybody, whether it's an intended parent or a surrogate, considering surrogacy in Florida?
Well, I think just like the theme of today is just getting your information and getting it early. So I think having a consult with a Florida reproductive attorney at the beginning of the process as a starting point will just alleviate a lot of questions and concerns so a parent understands like the path ahead of them.
Hmm.
And staying in touch with that lawyer as you get like, between considering this process and being matched could be a little bit of time, and laws could change, processes can change. So it's important to kind of like keep up with your lawyer on the current process, and just surrounding yourself with a great team, like between Fairfax and your lawyer and your doctor, like all channels of communication between all these parties has to be open and free flowing. I think to communication's key to this process. So I think just having good communication with the lawyer agency is really important and great guidance to keep in mind for anyone, international, domestic, considering, and the surrogate too, for everyone. It's good to
Hmm.
have,
Hmm.
good communication. And I always welcome surrogates reaching out to me at the beginning of the process, not just necessarily, I mean, most times we're not talking till the contract's ready, but just a surrogate who's thinking of this process. I'm happy to talk to them too, just like what's in store for me. And I welcome that. So
I love
communication's
that.
key. Yeah,
Yeah, it takes a village.
absolutely. My surrogate said the same thing.
Yeah,
Teamwork to
and
make the dream work was her saying.
exactly, exactly. And just on that topic, I want to mention that this is the part one of a three-part webinar series that we're doing together.
Yes.
In the second part, we're going to be speaking about the actual agreement with the surrogate and what goes into it and what goes into the review of the contracts. And then in the third part, we're going to be talking about the abortion laws in
Okay.
Florida. So we
Lots
wanted
to
to
talk
make
about.
lots to talk about, so we wanted to make this one short and sweet. Before we go, Marla, I love always, we talk about the professional side of things and our expertise in different areas, but we also want to know who is the person behind the lawyer. So
Oh,
who
okay.
is Marla
All
behind all
right.
this legal work? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy
Yeah.
doing?
Well, I love, spending time with my twin boys, and just being with the family is so important to me. I like to bake sourdough bread. That's one of my hobbies, and I love to play pickleball. So I guess those are two things that I enjoy doing, and that's kind of, some of the things that I like to do
I love that.
outside of work. Of course, I love my dog so much. I would show you. He's sleeping over there. His name is Zeke, and he's a fluffy little white schnauzer. And I didn't want to get a dog, and during COVID, I agreed to it, and now I'm just obsessed. So,
It
so
gives you
yeah,
company
he does. He
during the
really
day.
just, I walk around the house and I hear behind me tick, 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 his little
Oh.
feet. Yeah. So I'm a dog mom now too,
Oh my
apparently.
goodness. A dog
Yeah.
mom, a mom to twin boys. I
Yeah.
play pickleball. I love all of that. And please send
Thanks.
me some of your recipes for your bread. I love
Oh,
like a
I
good
would be happy
Peruvian.
to. Yeah. And I have such great memories of thinking back when you and I first met. We were standing in line at like a Men Having Babies
I know.
event
That
so
was my
many years
first
ago.
speaking event, and I was so
Oh,
nervous, and you were like, "It's okay."
yeah, that was
So
probably almost 11 years ago, because I
it was.
remember,
Oh my
yeah, my
God.
boys were either they're gestating or just born. So
Yes,
you
yes.
clearly we've both been in this industry for a long time, and it's been such a great journey being able to work with you and working with Fairfax. I have such great experience. So thank you for everything.
Likewise, likewise, Marla. It's an honor to have you, within the close network of professionals that we work with, that whenever we have a case with you, everything goes so smoothly. You're really accessible, really easy to talk to, and so knowledgeable. So thank you so much for your time, for
Thank you,
sharing all these
Carla.
insights. And we'll talk again soon.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Thank you so
Thank,
much.
thank you.
We are going to talk about your whys. Why did you choose the surrogacy way to parenthood versus a different way?
We wanted to be a part of the process, start to finish. We wanted to be a part of a pregnancy. We want to be a part of the newborn phase and raising babies all the way through their life. And this seemed like the best route for us to take to be able to have that experience.
How did you approach the surrogacy process?
We didn't start looking into surrogacy until the end of 2022. We talked about having kids since we met in 2012. We knew it was going to be a complicated thing and didn't know a whole lot of details about it. And I guess after we went through more of what we need to get done in life, like finishing school, finding a nice job, and living on our own, having a house, we started to explore the idea. Okay, I think we're in a comfortable spot to where we can make that possible. And I came across stories about surrogacy for gay couples like Derek and I. How do we have a baby when we can't make our own babies? And surrogacy, I came up with a bunch of stories like on YouTube and saw how people did it, started doing research, and I discovered what surrogacy is. And I remember seeing TV shows and movies that explained it, but I think they just went over my head back when I was a kid. There's a movie with Tina Fey and Amy Poehler called Baby Mama, and that's surrogacy, but it's a comedy movie.
When you had to share this with your family, how did they react?
Everybody was supportive, a lot of tears, a lot of crying involved, but everybody was really supportive and excited. We helped educate family and friends because they had many questions, and what we could answer, we would answer. And if we couldn't, we would ask our case manager, Rhonda, and she would walk us through getting those answers. But everybody around us learned a lot through this process.
What step did you take at the beginning of your journey?
The first thing we had to figure out was, could we financially do this? We figured that out. There's not really a lot of options for loan. We ended up selling our house. We moved in with Corey's parents so we could save money to help fund the surrogacy. I'd say the financial part was the biggest for us. A lot of sacrifices, but it's all worth it.
It's worth
Especially
it.
at the end when you get to hold your baby.
How did you choose the professionals you work with? In this case, us, Fairfax Surrogacy.
Well, once we started talking, this was the option we wanted to explore. We started with Google. Surrogacy in our area, Fairfax Surrogacy was one of the options that came up, and we saw good reviews and they were close to us when we submitted. I think we went online and submitted, let's get to know each other and see if we could do this. We met with Perla and talked for around an hour, just getting to know each other and how Fairfax Surrogacy works.
Did you guys talk to different agencies?
I contacted a couple of them via email, but Fairfax Surrogacy is the only one we actually met with, and then we proceeded with later. Yeah.
The feeling, okay, this is the one. It's like when you get married, this is the one, right? With the agency, you had to feel trust. It's a relationship you're building.
Yep.
Yeah. We heard your whys and your how did you choose the way to parenthood through surrogacy, and why did you choose us? Now let's go to your experience. What were the biggest challenges and highlights in your surrogacy journey?
Biggest challenges was being patient. This is a long process. It won't happen the next day. And going about it in small bites. There's a lot of different steps, and you have to tackle it one part at a time. The very first step after we met with Perla with Fairfax, we had to figure out, okay, how do we, afford this? We sold our house. Now we're on that step. Once this is done, we move on to the next step. And we just break it down, go slowly, and just not rush. Don't get overwhelmed.
Of course. And then there is also the waiting list, right? To find the perfect surrogate for you.
Yeah, we didn't do 3 different matches, but we did get sent 3 surrogates to look at. And we actually got the first one quickly, like 3 days. We were told it could take, with Fairfax, on average, 6 months to find a match. But we got matched within 3 days. We were excited about it. But after a week, we were contacted saying she changed her mind about carrying twins. I'm glad we learned that early. We don't want anyone doing anything they're not comfortable with. A couple months later, we got a second match. We hesitated a bit. If you don't feel a connection right away from the profile, don't try to force something. There's someone out there that you'll click with. Don't settle because you're putting trust into this stranger. We decided not to match on our second one. And then the third one came around early December 2023. We clicked, and that's who ended up being our surrogate.
Can you tell us the name of the surrogate?
Courtney.
And
You can see her by between our heads.
So
I was gonna say she's behind it. She became part of the family.
Yep. No, she's in a bunch of the pictures behind us.
How did you choose your surrogate? You had 3 different matches, but when with the last one, how did you go
Yeah.
through all that?
It was pretty instant. Just reading the profile, she was into things we were into, board games, video games. Cats, when we met on the video chat, it was just instant. We'd been best friends forever.
Yeah, we had a lot of similar interests.
So you will say that when you look for the surrogate, you will have to look for also the interest in common that you guys have.
Yeah. That way you have something to build a relationship on other than just the baby. You're
Exactly.
not just trying to figure out what to text each day or whatnot. If you have interests, it was easy. As soon as the match meeting was done and we got contact information, we talked multiple times a day, video chat. We played online games together before the contract. Interest is definitely of that relationship.
Fantastic. So I heard that she spent most of the time with you at the end of her pregnancy as well. You took care of her.
We went to Colorado where she lived right before 35 weeks. So that's what the OB recommended. So we were there for a month, stayed at her apartment for the last 2 weeks, helped out, cooked meals, saw Christmas lights, Thanksgiving together.
The
And
whole
then after,
experience.
and then after delivery, she rode back here. We drove Colorado from Virginia, so we would have our van, and we didn't want to put the babies on an airplane.
Yeah.
She stayed here for almost 3 weeks after delivery before she went home.
So that is what I call a good relationship building. You guys did build a relationship with your surrogate. She became part of the family with you.
Yep.
Now that the babies are here, are you connected to her? Are you guys in contact?
I'd say it's a little bit less, but it's still
The
pretty
connection.
good. She likes the updates on Facebook. She sees pictures.
The surrogates want to be part of your happiness because they're here to make you happy, to make the baby happy, to make this beautiful family. Surrogates want to see that. It's worth every moment because having a baby in your body is not easy.
Especially 2 of them.
2 of them.
And actually kept getting a lot of kudos and compliments. You did amazing with twin.
The question the surrogates answer a lot after this process, because the process is not 9 months, it's before and after. So they said that the most rewarding part for them is to give the baby to the parents and to see the happiness of the family. In your case, what is the most rewarding part of the surrogacy journey?
Getting to finally hold your baby.
Yes. It's all worth it. Oh, that is so beautiful, Angel. Oh, it is completely worth the time, worth every sacrifice you have made.
It was all worth it.
What did you wish people knew more about the surrogacy process?
One big thing people don't know is they think the surrogate is giving up their own baby to intended parents. And it's not. And that's what traditional surrogacy is. I don't believe it's practiced much anymore. And it's all called gestational surrogacy. But everyone just called it surrogacy, not gestational surrogacy. But that's a big learning thing for a lot of people that we've encountered is they're learning that, and we had to learn it too, was that they are not carrying their own genetic baby. They are carrying our embryo, a baby they have no genetic relationship to. No one's giving up their own baby. That's the number one thing I always see. People ask, how do you make sure she doesn't keep the baby?
People should know that surrogacy is not giving up your own baby because it's not your baby. You're just carrying someone else's baby in your
You're
body.
the babysitter
Exactly.
before they're ready for the
babysitting.
world.
The woman connects with the baby inside her, but they knows from the beginning it's a babysitting job.
That comes back to the whole making sure you trust this person you matched with. Like, you go with your gut. Don't settle on someone just because you're ready to keep going. Find that person you click with and trust.
Take your time.
Are they eating? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? We never had that fear with Courtney because we grew to trust her really fast. She was
Yeah.
great.
Wrapping up this questions, we want to have advice from you. It's a long process. Don't go with someone just because you want to get this done. It's about getting something right.
It's how long it takes to be patient. When you look up stories, they got a new step done. If you watch a YouTube channel, you're going to see each of the big milestones and not the 6 months or 3 months of waiting in between, knowing how patient you have to be with surrogacy. And it's not a very quick process. Even though it's not a quick process, it's still very much worth it in the end.
Yeah.
You will get to that goal. It's a marathon, not a sprint. All that waiting went by quick, but during the time, I was just like, I'm ready.
It goes fast. It's a long process. Once you're there, you're enjoying your moment. What advice would you give to other intended parents who are considering a surrogacy path to parenthood?
It's worth it. Even though you'll wait and go through steps, the end result is worth it. If you want to hold your baby when they're born, it's the best thing ever. Make sure to come at this with a lot of patience.
It'll be rewarding at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for choosing us as your agency. We're here for anything you need. Thank you, Corey and Derek, for telling your story. And hopefully we can share this to a lot of people who want to become parents through surrogacy.
And we hope our story helps others fulfill their dream with surrogacy.
What would you tell a mother considering it?
Thank you for considering this. What you're doing is the greatest gift. Without surrogates like you, we would not be able to have our own kids.
Thank you to all women making this miracle happen. Thank you
Yes.
so much. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for having us.
You have a fantastic rest of the day.